The Depth to Delve Deep by Rote Writer. Chapter 17. Edinburgh. Now in Scotland's capital, Edinburgh, Rote gets off a train paid for by a return train ticket still saved from his initial journey up to Scotland. He heads up the stairs into an architectural medieval montage dominating Edinburgh's Old Town. Rote's raw with awe with what he sees. A castle crowns the Mantle Mount much like the one in Stirling. It tops the town's volcanic ridge, sloping like a slow slide, lined with rows of old buildings built alongside. Medieval skyscrapers are stacked and hermetically sealed side by side, highlighted by Scotland's kirks, presbytery, churches, and cathedrals. Like a slow bend, they descend from the pinnacle of that proud parliament all the way down to Holyrood House. Holyrood House grows from a monk's brewery to the home of the Stuarts, and Stuart King heraldry. It still serves as a place of stay for those regarded as royalty. The ridge-rimmed route makes for a medieval main, forming a natural gorge on either side, increasing the splendor of the old town. Especially viewed from the viewpoint of the new town where Rote is, stupefied by the sights. Sights soar in some eyes found in lore. Rote learns during the filth and murk of the Middle Ages, Edinburgh is crowned as one of the filthiest and murkiest of all. People there, as everywhere, save for the so-called savage states, pour plenty of human waste onto the streets below, and depending upon what tier of the tenement, a trudge through waist-high sludge is common. Roche suspects the people provide plenty of putrescence for the pestilence to propagate the bubonic plague, the Black Death, amongst other similar and familiar diseases wiping out a third of the human population in medieval times. He also hears Edinburgh is endeared as Old Reekie for its thick overhang of black smoke during the Industrial Revolution. He imagines black lungs and black tongues as the common tongue. He is mindful of the medieval massacres en masse due to the rue of diseases and dark skies, and the few cries comforted amidst the mist and misery of things cast in the past. He learns the well-to-do townspeople virtually abandon the old town. They build the new town on the other side of the saddle, leaving the poor to putrefy in the pestilence. They deliberately enclose them in large groups to die in the many vaults buried beneath the old town, lest the downtrodden spread the diseases of death and dark skies. History holds happenstance historians in wonder of it all, and by all he walks along Princes Street, with its wonderful vale vista of the castle cascading into the gardens dividing the old from the new view. On Princes Street proper side of the garden glen, he glances at the Gothic monument erected in honor of Sir Walter Scott. Liking what he sees, he knows it won't be long before he climbs the spiral stairwell that leads up to the top. He takes a stop nearby the local bus dances with an idea of where to go, but not wholly sure. Burdened by the two blue bags, he boards a bus with a general gist of where accommodation can be found. Rote remembers some of the hostel addresses jotted down from a lonely planned guidebook. On board the bus, the driver, almost with resignation after trying to explain to Rote that the desired destination is no more than 2 blocks down, closes the bus doors in defeat and drives on, shaking his head. Headstrong, Rote pays the 50 pence, or as he hears it pronounced, 50p, like the letter P for pence. He brings himself and his 2 bulging blue bags to a seat beside a nice woman, who lets him know where the hostel is. The next stop, he gets off and crosses over to the first hostel to be stayed in Edinburgh. The hostel itself is all right, though no real ambience of anything Scottish, a prerequisite for Rote to remain. But remain he will for a few days. There, while searching out the city, sighting out other hostels in the old town. That's where he wants to be. The first few days, Rote's tugged by every tourist trap, and in the process, manages to experience the main core of Edinburgh's elderly quarter quickly. From the castle come all the way down an architecturally distinguished royal mile ending at Holyrood House, where Rote enters. Holyrood Abbey, a part palace, is the one-time residence of Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, mother to King James I of Scotland, simultaneously James VI of England, after Elizabeth I dies childless. He learns Mary's second husband, Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley, helps to brutally murder her secretary, David Rizzio, in Holyrood House. She's pregnant at the time. His blood still stains the floor. Rote kneels down and touches what can't be washed away. The tour guide gives graciously the history of the Holyrood House haunt. How Queen Margaret's son, David I, believes he's safe from being stuck by a stag's pointy antler by a pocketed piece of Christ's true cross. A reliquary, claimed on a crusade, perhaps or a mother's heirloom happenstance. Rote doesn't know. He knows the piece of wood, the Holyrood remnant, is registered in naming Holyrood House. The guide goes on with other stories as he burrs his brogue beautifully. He begins by going to great lengths in detailing how the term losing face is first coined. He does so by showing the group the fire guard set up fireside. Screens to prevent the heat from melting the makeup of the day, masking the hideous scars suffered from the plagues of the period. After seeing the inside, the group is led outside into the crypt-like cloister. From there they travel the gravelled yard through the Holyrood Palace gatehouse onto Canongate Street. Rote walks along the route that so many Stuarts, and Stuarts since the Bruce. The same storied street soon changes into High Street, halfway up the Royal Mile, then Castle Hill Street into the esplanade of Edinburgh Castle. That's where the Scotch Whisky Heritage Centre stands solidly near and dear, though it should read Scots Whisky rather than the misnomer of Scotch. At the top of the volcanic ridge, the grandeur of Edinburgh reigns supreme in a castle. It's on an impregnable volcanic mount, as if meshed into the stone. The stone surrounds the circumference of the castle's commanding countenance. The grand gates guarding the gargantuan gauntlets in all nowadays, all those who pay the entrance fee at least. Rote, with all this in mind, makes and pays his way around the keep, making sure he experiences it in its entirety, both inside and out. Inside he sees the Scottish crown jewels along with the Stone of Scone, known as the Stone of Destiny, kept on display in the heart of the fortress. Rote learns how 4 Scottish students, patriots, on Christmas Day in 1950, sneak into London's Westminster Abbey, and from underneath the wooden Windsor chair steal the stone beneath the throne. After the stone is snatched by the students, it shows up 4 months later in Arbroath Abbey with a saltire soundly surrounding it. The saltire surrounds it with the same solemnity of an abbot of Scone will lay a purple silk coverlet atop the Leal Fail, as the Ardrey sits and says, "The Scots shall rule that realm as native ground, whereversoever shall this stone be found." Rote muses over the missing stone. On his maiden voyage to London, he sneaks into Westminster Abbey and makes sure to touch the throne sans the stone, unbeknownst to him. He sees it now sitting within a protective glass enclosure alongside the Scottish crown jewels inside Edinburgh Castle. The stone has 2 metal rings hewn in it for carrying purposes, like a pallbearer's pail. Rote learns the stone is believed to be the very pillow biblical Jacob at Bethel rests his head during his dream. In his dream, angels ascend and descend on a stairway to heaven. Far from heaven, the stone somehow falls into the hands of the pharaohs of Egypt during the captivity. Reclaimed, it's brought over from the Red Sea area across Europe to Spain by Scotia, whose name sires the Scots in Scotland after they leave Ireland. Rote sees a similar sacredness. The stone of Fail atop the hill of Tara in Ireland, it seals the sacred seat of the High King, or Ardrey. It's given with the same gravity the Leah Fail seals the sacred seat for inaugurating Scottish kings in Scone. The Stone of Scone is stolen some 700 years ago by Edward I, the king who has William Wallace drawn and quartered. Meanwhile, the stone stolen by the students is sent to England, only to be formally returned to Scotland in 1996. Fascinated by all of this and that, Rote makes more than one pass by the stone before he carries on, castling through to the castle's crown. Atop the mount, a tiny tantamount, St. Margaret's Chapel rests like a reliquary. The chapel is endeared as Edinburgh's oldest building, built back in 1093. In the same palace blocks, he learns Mary, Queen of Scots, gives birth to the future King of Britain, James. Rote ventures to see the venal vaults and then heads out through the garrison gates down the Royal Mile. He stopped short of St. Giles Cathedral to see an enlarged stone crown literally crowning the cathedral. Inside, the potential pauper feels like he's in an architectural abode of the saints. The interior, like the exterior, is a hand-hewn masterpiece of masonry. He moves along the main of the nave to the choir, and then right by the steps of the crypt. He enters a lower-leveled little chapel carved out of wood and is left wowed. Back outside, he continues along High Street, though really the Royal Mall as it merges many into one. The streets cascade either way like Canongate and Cowgate to Lawn Market. Rote makes his way in and out of every shop, then up and down many a cultured close. Close, another word that has more than its usual meaning. The close, like the London Mew, is what the Scots in Edinburgh call their narrow lanes and alley-like passageways. They drop decisively down alongside the Royal Mile. Like imagined routes a raindrop will take on a definite decline into a steep stairwell, burrowed down like a trough between two towering stone walls, some enclosed completely all the way down the side of a volcanic ridge housing the House of Old, Edinburgh. After climbing every close and visiting all the Scottish shops for their Celtic wares and whatnot along the way, the wanderers found another day climbing the Crag of Eden, Arthur's Seat. Arthur's Seat, a massive volcanic mount that looks like a lion from the sea, is named on behalf of a Briton king, whose dune or fort is on top of the Eden, where Edinburgh Castle sits, Dunedin. The Scottish seat dominates the area much the same way this castle's volcanic ridge does. There on top, with a wonderful windswept view, stands the surely displaced Scot. On the way up to Arthur's Seat, Rote passes by a well-worn adorned St. Anthony's Chapel. Then up and around and through the many corries into the loch landing deemed Dunshappy, Duddingston, and St. Margaret's Loch moves the Mews of Merlin. Merlin's Mews passes by a mound of stones with a stick stuck in the middle of it. The ring of true king, Rote proceeds to pull it out like expunging Excalibur. Aye, Arthur's return with the same destined way. Rote removes the sword from the stone, or in this case the stick wedged in a pile of rocks. Rather than wielding it like a weapon, he waves it like a dowser or well-witcher. Whichever way Rote sways his sword, he nonetheless does, all the way up to the main massive, sometimes called Samson's Ribs, and all the way down Arthur's Seat, wishing and swishing the stick. Back on the Royal Mile, he twirls the forked staff in and out of every Celtic corner store visited earlier. He wields the wand for no other purpose but whim. With whim, he climbs another mount called Calton Hill, towering over the new town, an attic topped like the Acropolis at Athens in an analogous attempt at the Parthenon. It supposedly stands as the Edinburgh Blunder, or Blight. Rote quite likes it, for even though its original intent is to be complete, in its failure he finds it stands almost identical to the actual remains of the famous Greek citadel. Edinburgh has even been dubbed the Athens of the North because of it, and the nearby circular-like Greek temple dome for Dugald Stewart. But like all good things, Rote stands there tired of behaving like a tourist, especially after climbing yet another tower that twirls not too far from the main attraction atop Calton Hill. Already a day or so earlier, he climbs the spiral stairwell, winding its way up around the Sir Walter Scott monument on Princess Street, paying the £2 to do so. Now he's doing the exact same thing, paying another few quid to climb up another monument for a far less known Scottish noteworthy. These few quid here and there add up, and the about to be destitute is appalled at how quickly anything Scottish claims his dwindling quid. With that in mind, Rote walks back to the hostel with plans, like an addict, to take just one more tourist trip through the Highlands the following day on a guided minibus